I just say, like, learn to love yourself and know who you are as a person, that anything that people say doesn't hurt you because you know the truth about yourself. And I think that was my biggest growth area, was knowing that and understanding that and being okay that people are going to say what they want to say. I can't control that. I can't control anything that people say. I can't control what people post on my social media. I can't control anything. All I can control is what I feel, what I think, and how I act in a day-to-day. And if I believe that I'm being the best version of myself, then I can't let that affect me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Matthew Chow. I'm a physician and specialist in mental health, and I'm Chief Mental Health Officer at TELUS Health. I have the absolute privilege of interviewing Jordyn Huitema today. She is a Canadian gold medalist and all-around awesome human being. She went pro at a very young age, and even moved to Paris at the age of 17. What's it like to be back here in Vancouver today for you?
Yeah, it definitely feels like home, a little home away from home. I think I grew up in Chilliwack, but moved out here quite young. And so this kind of was my teenage years growing up in high school with all my friends. So it's nice to be back. Definitely feels comforting, feels like home.
And you mentioned earlier that you actually moved away from home like very, very young, like as a young teenager. What was that like?
Yeah, it was tough, I think. My older brother, he moved out when he was 15, I believe. So he also went to the Whitecaps program, did the same thing that I did. So I was kind of like following in his footsteps a little bit. So he got to pave the way a little bit for me and to understand it a little bit. And then I moved out when I was 14 and came out to Vancouver, started living with some billet families, was in the program for 3 years, and then decided to move to Paris and go professional.
I like how that just rolls off the tongue. You just decided to move to Paris.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, that was wild. I think at the time it had never been done. So everybody had kind of gone to university being a Canadian. There had been American women who had gone through high school and gone straight professional, but there had never been a Canadian. I think like growing up, everybody was kind of like, I will go to high school, go to university in the US, and then I'll go professional. So I think for me, the toughest decision was whether it was worth it to give up a scholarship at a US school or to go pro. And I was a little bit nervous because it had never been done. Will it work out? All of those stuff. So like that was where the hard decision kind of came. And then when I felt like it was the right decision, then it was just like all guns blazing. I actually was taking courses in high school. I took a grade 12 course in grade 11. I was trying to like get my credits done quickly. And I took like a class at lunch. So I like gave up my lunchtime and took class at lunch so that I could get my credits. And I graduated early. So I graduated in January. So I was 17 and I moved out to Paris in January. So I missed graduation. I missed prom. Didn't do any of it. Graduated early and went to Paris and stayed there for 4 years and then moved back after I was done there.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this is going to be about mental health, but like, what was all of that like? Moving away from home, like being a trailblazer. I think that's an accurate word to describe you and what you did there, because you were the first to do that, and then moving to a foreign country for a number of years.
Yeah, it was hard. It was definitely one of the hardest things I've done. Moving to France was tough. No one spoke English really, and foreign country. So I found out actually when I got there that you had to be 18. If you're a foreigner, you have to be 18 to rent an apartment. So I couldn't rent an apartment for 7 months or 6 months. And so I had to live in a hotel room for 6 months. So that was tough because I'm eating out of a mini fridge and I have no car and my teammates have to pick me up and I can't get anywhere in the day-to-day life. That walking distance isn't really there. I'm not in Paris. We're in like the outskirts of Paris. So that was tough. Being away from home, I think the hardest parts of those was when I was like younger, when I was like 14, 15. I think those were the harder moments. But I got to go back every weekend usually. We trained Monday through Friday, and then we had Saturday, Sunday off. And so my dad would come drive out and grab me on Fridays and then drive me back either Monday morning at like 4 a.m. because we had morning lift at 6 a.m. and it's about an hour and a half away. So we'd wake up at 4 and start driving. if I wanted like an extra little night, or I'd leave Sunday night back home. But that helped the transition for sure. But there was definitely nights where I missed them a little bit. And then when I got to Paris, there was definitely some times where all you have is Christmas and a little bit of summer, but usually summer is taken up with like major tournaments, whether it's like qualifiers or World Cups. So I didn't get to see them too much. So there was definitely moments that was hard. It was sad. I think the saddest part is like when you get sick. I don't even know why, but it's just like when you get sick and like you have a runny nose and you can't get out of bed, but then your mom's not there to make you soup and you like are laying in bed just ill, and now you don't eat all day because you have no energy to make yourself food. And you're 17, you're like, well, I've never had this before. I've never experienced not having anybody here. I think that was kind of like the first moments where I was like, whoa, I'm really far from my family. Or like you have to give them like a couple weeks warning in order, like if you're like, I need you, they're like, okay, we can get out in 5 days. So it's like, okay, but I need you now, like here in person. So I think that, and I'm very close with my parents. So like growing up, that was like my support system. And I was just like, I need you guys here now. And they'd make some like last minute trips to Paris, but like that's like an 11-hour flight. So it's not like the easiest commute. But yeah, there's hard moments, got through it, definitely had a good support system at the time. And now I'm back close to home, which is nice. That's like a part of why I came back to the NWSL, was to be closer to home, closer to family, closer to friends. And yeah.
And you're here like for some pretty exciting stuff, on Friday, playing on the weekend there, and then on Tuesday, of course.
Yeah, some big games with the team and a send-off for obviously Sink, like Christine Sinclair and Sophie Schmidt. So it's going to be a big final game for them. It's going to be quite emotional. A lot going on behind the scenes with the team right now. So it's definitely exciting. Got a good result the first game. Looking to get another one this coming game in Vancouver. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
So let's chat about mental health. What does mental health mean to you?
For me, it's just the well-being of the mind, and just making sure that for me as an athlete, it's knowing that physically and mentally I'm where I need to be. And I think that there's an importance physically that's put on athletes of like making sure that we're maintaining ourselves to be the best we can be and looking for our 1% physically. And sometimes I feel like the mental side of it can get lost. And I feel like recently, I think there's been a push for mental health, and it's been amplified to kind of take your time to put focus on your mental health, put focus on yourself, and that just will lead to a better version of you physically and on the field. So that's kind of what it means to me.
What do you think is behind that drive, that push to recognize mental health a bit more than before?
I feel like it's an awareness piece. I think it's a little bit of vulnerability. I think like people are becoming more open to having conversations like this, being more vulnerable online, socially, that people can see and say that experiences they're going through isn't something that they're alone with. And I think that seeing people like athletes or people they watch day in and day out relating to them and saying, hey, I'm going through similar things as them, makes them feel like they can speak more openly about it and reach out for more help if they need it.
Absolutely. I mean, so I've been a physician practicing in this area for a long time now, and I can tell you, it used to be impossible to have a conversation like this.
Yeah.
Like mental health was kind of like stigmatized. People didn't talk about it. And so the fact that you're here talking to me about it is incredible. Do you have any like special routines or practices that you have in your life to maintain sort of mental well-being and mental wellness?
For me, I feel like it's just kind of finding my moments. And I think like everybody has like a little self-care kind of regime. And for me, it's like finding what makes me at peace in a way. And I think everybody's so different. So it's just finding a routine for you and what works for you. I think for me, I love skincare, and I love, like, I call them like my all-in-one showers. So it's just kind of like you're doing everything, a hair mask and a bath with bubbles, and you're just kind of like treating yourself and taking time for you. And I think like cooking is one for me where it's just like really taking time to do little details. And I'll do like little stir fries, and in the carrots, I'll make like little flowers out of the carrots, because it's just like putting time for me, because I'm special and I'm important for myself. So it's important to put time into me. And I think those little moments kind of keep me at ease and peaceful throughout the day, and kind of finding those pockets of peace is what kind of keeps me level-headed.
I have to admit, I didn't think that skincare would be part of the answer, but I think that just illustrates it is different for everyone, isn't it? right? Like I've heard some people say like going for a run helps. Some people have said meditation helps. I've heard cooking before as well. Like there's an artistry to that. So that's part of your, like how you maintain your mental health as well as
Yeah. And for me too, shopping. I really love shopping. And I think like shopping alone is big for me. Like retail therapy is real nice. And for me too, it's like, I feel like there's certain times of days that I like to go. Like I don't like to go when it's too busy. I like when it's like very calm. I'm by myself. I can kind of like take my time to do whatever I want to do with it. So little things like that. I have also tried meditation. I enjoy it to find those moments throughout the day too. Little things like that. But it's, yeah, like you said, it's different for everybody. It looks differently for everybody. And something that works for somebody might not work at all for you. And so you kind of just have to find your individualized personal way to make yourself feel good.
Yeah, that's an important message, right? And it's different for different people, and that people should spend the time on themselves. It's important. How do you know when your mental health is like under pressure? You know, when things are harder. How can you tell?
I think I can feel it. I think like things start speeding up a lot, even if they're not. I think like for me, my brain moves a million miles a second, even if my body isn't. And I still feel like I'm overthinking or, I don't know, overstimulated in a way. And I can start feeling that. And then I just need to step away from whatever environment I am in and kind of like go back to like my safe space, whether it's with loved ones, with significant others, just like feeling good and feeling calm and kind of just like relaxing myself back down. I think that's kind of like the moments that I start feeling it. And those are kind of, for me, the kind of like warning signs of like things could progress and start getting worse. So once I feel those moments, then I'll start to like kind of retreat and kind of recognize them, acknowledge them, and accept them, and then do things to counterbalance those and then work towards them. And then so it doesn't elevate from there.
So I read this statistic the other day, which was alarming. I don't know if you've seen this before, but it said that like upwards of 40% of pro athletes have experienced like anxiety or depression at some point. Like, does that surprise you or not surprise you?
I don't think it surprises me. I think there's a lot that athletes go through that not a lot of people see. I think athletes understand athletes for that exact reason. I definitely think the sport in general and like has been glamorized to be like so beautiful and perfect, and all you do is play a sport and then you go home and rest the rest of the day and you don't do anything with your life, and like it's so easy and you're making a lot of money. For a lot of people that's not the case, and I think like that's another one, is that it's been kind of glamorized in social media, and there's a lot of girls that I know that have to work a second job because they're not even making enough money. And so like just those added stresses, and then you have to do film and meetings with your teams all the time, and then you're trying to balance a different life. So I think it doesn't surprise me. I think there's a lot of work, and I think that there's a lot of difficulties that come through sport. I mean, even for me, I didn't make the Olympic team a few years ago, and I was an alternate, which is kind of like a player that is, there's a squad and then there's 4 alternates, and then in the Olympics they actually extended it so everybody was a part of the same roster, and so I was able to actually rotate into the squad and play a little bit, but that was very difficult for me. And so little things like that, I think a lot of athletes go through, like cuts and trying to push yourself to the next level and maybe feeling like you're not quite there, or being disappointed in yourself, or coaches being disappointed in you, and then you get down on yourself. So I think there's a lot of mental in sport, more than people recognize.
How do you deal with that self-doubt? It sounds like every pro athlete goes through it at some point.
Yeah, self-doubt is a tough one. I don't think that there's a simple answer to that one. I think, again, it's very different for different people, and people are still solving it. I'm still solving it. I still encounter self-doubt. There's, I can't say that I've gone without that for my whole life. I have had self-doubt. So, hey, if you got the answer, shoot it my way.
It's interesting, right? That you're an Olympian, and you're saying that you experienced self-doubt. I went to medical school with an Olympic athlete as well, like a medalist from the Sydney Olympic Games, and same thing, right? Like still had self-doubts, but found ways to get through that.
There's definitely moments, I think it's like that as an athlete, you feel good, and then you're having a spell where you're not performing as what you're used to. And then it's, how do you get out of that? How do you push yourself to feel prepared so that every day you step on the field knowing that everything you did off the field has prepared you for that day. And so you can start feeling better and better and building your confidence, having good performances, feeling more confident, little things like that. But as an athlete, it's always going to be highs and lows. And that's just a part of the sport. And that's why the highs feel so good, is because you've encountered lows, you've encountered losses, you've encountered making it to the finals but losing. So that's why winning feels so good.
Yeah. Well, just before we started chatting, you were describing like a day in the life, right? Like even this weekend, you were playing in the like pouring rain. It was like wild weather this weekend in Langford. And then you had to like take a ferry here, and then you had a team meeting on the weekend. You know, when other people are taking a break on the weekend, you're like working.
Yeah.
And then you're like driving here to talk, right? So that sounds like...
Yeah, I think in sports, I don't think we see a weekend. It's not like weekday, weekend at all. I don't like when people say, oh, what day of the week it is. I have no idea. Like it's either training day, it's game day, or it's off day. And that's it. That's all I know. So yeah, Saturday, Sunday, Monday are all the same days to me. There's no weekends. There's no weekdays. It's, am I prepping for my game? Is it game day, or is it my rest and recovery day? And that's it.
Yeah. And I think, that's important for people to know about that, right? Like that there's a glamorous part of sport, and then there's the day-to-day, which is important too, but it's the part that people don't see. Can you tell us about a time in your life that, was particularly tough, and like maybe give the audience some ideas about how that was for you and how you coped with it, how you got through it?
No, I think I mentioned it a little bit before, but the Olympic squad was definitely the most difficult thing I've gone through in my career, for sure. I think for me, you're wanting to make those big squads, you're wanting to make the World Cup rosters, you want to make the Olympic rosters. Those are like, as an athlete with your national team, those are your dreams, those are your goals. So to work your whole life and then be cut in the last second, or to not make it by one player or whatever it is, it crushes you a little bit. And for me, it was at first when I had the conversation with my coach about it, she had said, yeah, you haven't been selected to be a part of the 18, but I do want you to come as one of the 4 alternates. And for me, it was tough. And I think I had multiple conversations with teammates, loved ones. I was unsure if I even wanted to be an alternate, like to kind of watch what I wanted to be doing, but I couldn't, because at the time, alternates, the roster couldn't rotate unless someone got injured. You're not in. So for me, I had imagined myself going through all the way through the Olympics, training with this squad, and then every game day being in the stands and just watching what I had always dreamed of. So that was always so hard. And so I just had so many conversations and was just trying to decide of what I wanted to do. And at the end of the day, I am not the type of person that puts myself before the team ever. And I wasn't going to do that in this moment either. And the team needed me to be there, to be a training player, to support them, to give them the best version of me that they needed. So at the end of the day, that was my decision. So I said, I'm going to be the best training player. I'm going to give you the best pictures. I'm going to be the best Germany. I'm going to be the best Brazil. I'm going to be the best, whatever you need me to be. I'll be the best of that so that you guys can succeed and be the best you. And then the universe gave me a little gift, and the squads were able to rotate. So the 18, you could switch it every time. You always had to have 4 in the stands still, but you could rotate the 18. And I worked because I was like, I will be a part of that 18. If I have to die, I will do this. Like, that was my goal. I knew as soon as that was announced, I was like, I will be in that 18. When if the gold medal happens, and the gold medal game happens, I will be in it, and I will be playing for this team in that 18. So I think for me, that was hard. And there was obviously so much self-doubt because a whole group of coaches just said I wasn't good enough to be there on that 18. So I was just like, maybe I'm not good enough. So you're going through that at the beginning. And then you just keep working, and then you kind of see that you are good enough, and you believe in yourself. And even if no one else does, you do. So you're going to make it. So I think for me, that's where I was at in that point. And the first game of the tournament didn't make the 18. I was in the stands. I think second game, I was also in the stands. And then the third game, I made it into the 18. And then from there, I never left. So group stage, quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, I stayed in the squad. I was never going to give that spot back up. And yeah, and then I was able to play in the gold medal match and be a part of that with the team. And it was a wild experience that I'm very, very grateful for now. I grew a lot through it, but it was definitely the hardest thing I've been through in my career for sure.
Do you remember any particularly powerful advice that you heard during that tough time? Because you mentioned you talked to a lot of different people. Do you remember something that stands out in your mind?
Honestly, I one of the people I called was Christine, and she was my first call. Like I don't even know if I had told my family before I told her, because obviously the team squad had come out to the team very quickly, and people were realizing that I wasn't on it. So her and I are quite close, and we've had lots of conversations, and like obviously she took me under her wing growing up, and being in the same position, and I've looked up to her my whole life. So she was like one of my first calls, and I just remember bawling with her on the phone. Like I was just crying. And she was that was kind of the conversation of like the team. It was just, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about the situation. It was about the team and what they needed, and proving myself, even if I wasn't going to make it back in the squad, but proving myself that I should have been there, even if I couldn't rotate in. So had the rules not even changed, it's showing day in and day out that I deserved to be there, even if I couldn't be. And I think like that conversation was kind of the moment where I was like, I'm going. First of all, I'm going to make the decision to go as an alternate. And then from there, that's when the rules changed. But that conversation was definitely a turning point for me, because I was very unsure whether to go or not. And it was definitely a good decision. So I'm grateful that I was able to reach out, have conversations, and not, like, I think on the phone call with my coach, she kind of had said, do you want to be an alternate? Like, do you accept it? And I said, I need time to process, and I need time to think. And I'm very glad that I didn't just rashly say like no or yes or whatever it was. Like I really took time for myself to like sit back, understand what's being asked of me. What does the role entail? Can I do it? Is somebody else going to be better at it than me? Is there a better alternate? Is there going to be somebody who impacts the team in a more substantial way than I can? So it was like all of those things I needed to have conversations. And then after doing all that, I felt good with my answer. And I felt like I could give myself 100% to the team, knowing what I knew after taking my time. Mm-hmm.
That's an incredible story. And it's such a powerful message too, about like in a moment when you were like probably pretty vulnerable, that you had the maturity and the foresight to like take a step back, to get advice from
I was only 20, I think, at the time.
Which is like even more incredible, right? And you mentioned like you feel like you've experienced a lot of personal growth since that time as well, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about social media for a second. So I've heard you have a bit of a social media presence. Maybe that's an understatement. How do you balance like obviously the very positive aspects of it, right? Versus, sometimes some of the negative aspects, especially for girls and women. Like it is a tough crowd out there, and not very fair. If I might be honest, as someone who's a father of a 10-year-old, daughter. But yeah, do you have any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I've definitely got a love-hate with social media, I think. Yeah, a love-hate relationship with social media. I think that it connects people in such a beautiful way, but it also gives people the ability to say things that they wouldn't if they were right at your face. And I think like that's the tough thing about social media, is that people are able to hide behind screens and say things that are hurtful or offensive that standing at your face they would never say to you. No way. So it's just like, I think that's where the internet has flaws. That's where the internet is hard. I think for the younger generation, keeping them away from the internet as long as they possibly can, or social media. I mean, I didn't have Instagram until I was like 13, 14. And like now people are like 8 and they have Instagram. So it's definitely a different age. For me, I want to keep my kids as far away from social media as long as I possibly can. But it's also has a positive side. That's why it was created. That's why it's been molded. And that's why I love my fans. I love all of them so much. And the way they support me is, some of the support I get on social media is insane. Like it literally, they feel like my friends in a way, and I've never met them. But then the other side is definitely difficult. And for me, I think over the years, the hate has grown for sure. I think as you're accumulating more followers, there's going to be people who dislike you, and there's going to be people who want to see you fail, or they love to see you fail, and then they thrive on it and they love it. So I think that's definitely grown for me over the years, and it's been really tough. And I think for me personally, I've tried to ignore it or stay off of it or post what I need to share, interact with the people who are positively commenting or pushing positivity. I'll interact with that. But as far as negativity and rude comments and things like that, I honestly just tried to avoid them, not look at them, don't read too much into them. Because at the end of the day, like, the truth of my story, the truth of who I am as a person, I know it. My family knows it. My loved ones know it. And so for me, my circle knows who I am, and that's what matters to me. And I think what makes it hard for certain people is that when they start feeding too much into what other people feel about them, when they don't even know who they are. But then they start believing people like, oh yeah, maybe I am that, but they don't even know you. So it's just like, for me, that's where I've tried to draw a bubble of my loved ones know who I am, I know who I am, and that's it. And so anything from the outside, anybody making comments of people who don't know me, who've never spoken to me, they're making aggressive or negative comments towards me, I can't let that affect me because you don't know who I am, so it's hard, and it still affects me. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but that's what I've been trying to grow with doing. Yeah.
Do you have advice for like young women who are on social media? I mean, you mentioned like your kids, you'll keep them away from social media as long as possible. Yeah. And you know what? As a physician, I sometimes actually like prescribe that. I recommend that to people, like social media cleanse, like delete the apps off your phone, get off, like, because it's like dragging you down. But do you have any advice for people who are dealing with this? Like either like young girls and women, people that are in sports, like the people that have to, that encounter this. Like, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the only thing you can do is kind of escape from it. And I think like detaching from your phone, leaving it at home for a while and going for a walk with your friend or whatever it is. It's just like your life isn't your phone. And I feel like sometimes our screen time can be like 8-9 hours in a day. And I think like we get very like isolated on the four walls of our phone. And I think there's so much of a world out there. Look bigger than that. And I just say, like, learn to love yourself and know who you are as a person, that anything that people say doesn't hurt you because you know the truth about yourself. And I think that was my biggest growth area, was knowing that and understanding that and being okay that people are going to say what they want to say. I can't control that. I can't control anything that people say. I can't control what people post on my social media. I can't control anything. All I can control is what I feel, what I think, and how I act in a day-to-day. And if I believe that I'm being the best version of myself, then I can't let that affect me.
Well, I can tell you, you exude wisdom and confidence and like a really positive self-image of yourself. That's what I feel from you right now, which I can tell has also been built up over time and with like some hard knocks.
There's been some tough stages for sure. And I think it's like outside of social media, it's just life. And I think that life will teach you a lot of stuff, and life will put you through some hard things that you'll learn a lot from. And that will just make you grow in day-to-day life with social media, with anything. As a human being, you'll just continue to grow.
Do you think we do enough to support people's mental health these days? Like, given that there is like kind of more awareness and people are talking about it more?
The general public, I don't know. I feel like there's access to it. I think for athletes, I think it's becoming more available as well. I think there's still like a hesitancy of, do I go? Do I need to share it? Am I fine? Like it's kind of like I haven't talked to somebody before and I'm doing all right. So do I need it? And I think at the end of the day, everybody needs it. Like if you want to talk to somebody about your life in general, I think everybody goes through hard moments, whether it's something little or something big. Even something little to somebody could be something big. So it's just like, don't ever underestimate something you're going through, and even something that you think is minute might need to be talked about. And having somebody to just bank your thoughts off of is great. And somebody who's not involved in the picture, somebody who isn't a relative or isn't a friend, who is in your close circle, somebody who just will try to help you be the best version of you, but doesn't impact your actual circle to have an opinion on you is really nice. And I think like, yeah, if you have the ability to talk to somebody, I think that it is helpful for everybody.
I love what you shared about this because, you know, as a mental health physician, what I often find is people wait until they're like really, really like dire straits, broken, right? Like, or like have a mental, like bona fide mental illness before they're reaching out. And it's like, no, like you can get help soon. Yeah, it's preventable. You can get help sooner. It doesn't always have to be about like treatment. Sometimes just like getting some coaching, some therapy is helpful for folks.
For sure. My team has definitely like I play for the OL Reign in Seattle. And I think that team especially has normalized it 1,000%. Like we'll be out on a day off and we'll be at the beach and there'll be two of the players being like, I need to get back, guys. I got therapy at 4. And the other one's like, I got therapy at 5. So let's go, you know? So it's just like, it's very talked about. It's very normalized, which I've appreciated. And like, that's new for me too. You know, I used to be in France where it's not as talked about versus in the US. I feel like it's being talked about more, being normalized more. But I loved it because it's just like, it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It doesn't mean that like you're off or that, yeah, like it doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It means that you're just trying to improve yourself. You're trying to have the best version of you. And I think like that's the important piece, or you're just trying to make your life better. It doesn't mean that, yeah. So I think that's the important piece from it too. It's something I've learned over time too, but it's definitely becoming normalized within the soccer community, which is amazing. And I think more and more people are saying that, hey, we need a full-time therapist with the team, or we need a full-time mental coach with the team. And I think like that's been a big request from all players. They're all asking for that.
Yeah, I'm seeing that's becoming more common now, having a team psychologist or a team therapist.
For sure.
But that story that you shared is going to stick in my mind. Interrupting the day at the beach to get back to a therapy appointment.
Yeah, we were literally like planning the day around it. Like we were like heading to the beach and we're like, okay, what time do we have to leave with the car? Because we're all like one unit. Because like as when you're away on road trips, they only give you like 3 cars or something. So like a whole group of like 8 of us went out to the beach, and then we're like, okay. And then 2 of them were like, we gotta leave at 3 because I gotta be back by 4 for my therapy session. And then they're like, well, and they're like, maybe I could push it. No, I don't want to push it. So yeah, we got to be back. So yeah, we literally planned days around it. And like everybody's like, okay, you got therapy at 4. We're back at 4. Like all 8 people were like on it. And we're like, oh, come on. No one's like, oh, come on, stay at the beach. Like it's our one day off. Everyone's like, you got therapy at 4? We'll be back at 3:50. Like that's the kind of attitude, which is really nice.
There's something very beautiful about that because you care about each other to that
so much,
extent.
100%. That no matter, it doesn't matter if you had an envision of what your day looked like, or you thought you were going to be on the beach until 6. As soon as that person said they needed something at 4, you were like, I don't care what I had thought of the day. That's the plan, and that's where we're all going.
And it goes back actually to something you said earlier about like investing in yourself, like actually taking care of yourself and like putting like your 100% commitment into that and valuing it, because it is important. It's cool to hear that your team does that for each other too. Any final thoughts about mental health? Like if there was like one thing that you wanted to share with the audience about mental health, some insight that you had or something that you've learned, what might that be?
I just say don't underestimate it. I think like that's, yeah, it can change you as a person. Like if you're going through something, if you're anxious, if you're depressed, if you're anything, if you're going through something, it's important, and it can drag you down as a person and like stop life in its tracks just because your mind isn't where it needs to be. So I think like the importance of it is just huge, and don't underestimate it for sure.
Amazing advice. Thank you so much, Jordyn. You are, like I said, an amazing person, a hero to many. And as a parent to a young daughter, I think I'm going to take some of your advice about social media and share that with my children. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege, and hope you've all learned something about mental health.